The creators, interpreters, and enforcers of the law are immune from being impugned. They have legal protections, immunity from being blamed, criticized, or prosecuted for their actions, while enjoying exemption, impunity from punishment or consequences because they are protected from prosecution. All right? Creators, interpreters, and enforcers of the law, government, are not accountable for their actions. The standards are different for them versus the rest of us. So be prepared to be sad, S-A-D, surprised, angered, and disgusted. My name is Roy Davis, and this is my story.
Attention all units, attention all units. Respond to the 9th floor, 388 the courtroom, receiving a silent panic alarm from the judge's bench.
This alarm triggered the emergency response of law enforcement. Once law enforcement responders arrived, they quickly determined that there was no emergency at all. Instead, they found Judge Marlene Gonzalez sitting at her bench before an empty courtroom. No emergency, no threats, just a lost-looking judge who uttered, "I was testing to see if the button worked and how long it would take for you guys to get here." Judge Gonzalez's attitude about the entire event was dismissive. Activating a baseless or false alarm is a serious matter. Individuals cannot willy-nilly go around pushing panic buttons or pulling fire alarms when no emergency exists. Doing so in Texas is a criminal offense that carries punishments up to 2 years of incarceration. Roy Davis, one of the first responders, informed Judge Gonzalez that her deliberate activation of the false alarm was a crime and that he had a duty as a peace officer to, at minimum, file an incident report. Judge Gonzalez became angry and told Roy Davis that if he filed a report, he'd be fired. Despite the judge's threat, Roy Davis refused to be derelict in his duty and did the right thing. He filed a report documenting Judge Gonzalez's crime. Because he refused to participate in the unlawful cover-up of Judge Gonzalez's crime, Roy Davis's employment was terminated. But Judge Gonzalez didn't stop at the termination. She went on to contact several of her acquaintances to vilify Roy Davis. In an effort to protect herself from the repercussions of her crime, Judge Gonzalez worked feverishly to destroy the reputation and credibility of Roy Davis, the man who stood up for what was right and refused to turn a blind eye to crime, even when the offender is a judge. Here is Roy Davis to share his experiences in his pursuit of justice.
You just heard about the incident that took place in El Paso County, Texas, in May of 2024. Yes, Judge Marlene Gonzalez commits a felony while sitting on the bench, and I, the peace officer who merely did his job by filing a mandatory report, I get terminated. Judge Marlene Gonzalez still sits on the bench as of the date of this recording. But what's really sickening about it is that there are 35 plus more judges who were aware of Marlene Gonzalez's conduct, criminal conduct. And per the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct, if a judge becomes aware that another judge is violating rules, statutes, or committing crimes, they have a duty to report them. Has that happened here? No. You have 35 plus more judges who were aware of Judge Marlene Gonzalez's criminal conduct and didn't do a damn thing. It lets you know that these cowards in these black robes, what they're about. So they're about covering up crime, not about enforcing crime or about enforcing the laws that they've sworn to uphold. That's a bunch of malarkey. They're not doing it. Or they're picking and choosing upon whom they wish to do it. Still doesn't make it right. So just a little bit of history about myself. So, I think it's important to understand that I don't have a criminal record. I'm not a criminal or a bad guy, or I'm not a person who has a sketchy or spotty employment record that have been fired from multiple jobs or any job for that matter. And, my fate finally catches up with me. And now all of a sudden I'm crying foul because my fate caught up with me. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who was raised by strict parents who instilled the values in me about doing the right thing all the time and about telling the truth all the time. And I've done my best in my adulthood to live by those values. Just an example of that, I did a 20-year police career that I started at the age of 20. And within that 20 years, I did not receive one discipline. Never suspended, not even for 1 hour for anything. I always got very good evaluations. Always got pay raises. I was promoted 5 times during that 20-year career. I started as a patrol officer, and my promotions included promotion to detective, promotion to sergeant, promotion to lieutenant, promotion to captain, and promotion to commander. And I made a change. I made some differences in people's lives while I was there. Then after that, I got into private investigation, which I'm still in today. I own my own company. And I, along with my other agents, we assist people who've been alleged to have committed crimes that they really didn't commit. So we advocate for the innocent. And then in 2015, I accepted a position as a court bailiff. I figured that's a noble profession, still considered a law enforcement position. And I worked in that position for 8 years, assisting people in and out of the courts, attorneys, people who were litigants, and of course, trying to take care of the judges to whom I was assigned. And I believed, as I was raised in the system, that the United States of American system is about justice. I know, try not to laugh. I drank the Kool-Aid and I was naive. I was naive for 45 years of my adult life. I really believed in and trusted the system until that fateful day when a judge commits a crime and all of a sudden it's all covered up and I'm the one who gets punished and terminated from my employment simply for filing a report reporting that crime. So now that you know my background, you know that I'm not coming to you as just somebody, again, that's a whiner that has had a peppered path and past, and now all of a sudden I'm crying foul. I am crying foul. But I need you to understand that as you watch this video and our future videos of our future podcasts, maybe not involving me, but anyone else, we're not coming from a position of hate and revenge. It's real easy for someone to say, oh, they're just mad, they got sour grapes, they're just trying to get revenge. That's not what it's about. What it's about is sharing the information. It's about educating the public so they are aware of things that are going on that they probably would not otherwise be aware of. And this is coming from myself, a man of faith. Okay, insofar as the individuals in this already forgiven. But just because they're forgiven doesn't mean that the information does not need to be shared. It needs to be shared. And it needs to be shared because these are people who we are electing into office. We are entrusting our lives, the lives of our loved ones, our assets, and our liberties to these people. And we need to make sure that we have quality people sitting in these seats. And if they are permitted to do things that are unlawful, or unethical, and it goes unreported, then the public doesn't know. We just continue to vote for them. We could keep putting them in office. But I believe that if people become aware of these activities and their conduct, that when it comes time to go to the polls and vote, that they're going to make more educated decisions about who we're putting in office. Now let's get down to it. Let's go back to May of 2024. Again, like we opened with, Judge Marlene Gonzalez is sitting in her courtroom behind her bench, nothing going on. I'm not going to even begin to try to guess why she pushed this button, but she pushes a panic button, basically signaling law enforcement that there is an emergency going on in her courtroom. She needs help now, which basically brings about what we call like a code 3 or a very urgent response to get to that courtroom to make sure everything's okay. We don't know what's going on. Is she being held hostage? Is there weapons involved? There could be a multitude of scenarios. So you got a quick response, just like you would to any emergency button. A banker pushes an emergency button, a silent alarm for a bank robbery, they're going to get that same response. Someone pulls a fire alarm, they're going to get that same response from the firefighters. It's all on the same level. Okay, and I think we all know, we're all taught at an early age that you don't do that unless there is a bona fide emergency. Okay, and it's not just a don't do that. These actions, if they're done and there's not a bona fide emergency, they do bring with them criminal charges for which you can be fined heavily and or incarcerated up to years. It's not a joke and it's not funny. Sometimes people have died, first responders have died trying to get to an emergency call to assist them. So you understand what can happen. A lot of things can go wrong. But apparently on this day, still don't know why she did it. Maybe in the future she may be willing to come on to the show and tell us and explain why, But until then, I'm not going to try to get into her head and try to guess why she did it. All I can say is she did it and there was no bona fide emergency. So we'll just run with that. So let me give a little bit of history also. When I was hired as a bailiff in Texas, Texas allows certain communities to, for their judges, their district judges and their county judges to appoint their bailiffs and appoint their bailiffs to work what they call at will and at the pleasure of that judge during their term. El Paso is one of those counties. I was hired under, that way, under such a rule. If that rule still applied today, I would not be sitting here sharing this with you because basically, if I served at her will, then she could terminate me for any reason, and that would probably be the end of it. Kind of, sort of. But there's a couple problems with that. Yes, Texas is an at-will state, but an employer cannot fire you if they ask you to do something against the law. You refuse to do it, and then you get fired. Okay, that is an exception to the at-will firing, such as my case. Because after she pushed the button, I did have to approach her and tell her that I needed to file a report. As part of my duty, it's mandatory. It's the law. In fact, as a peace officer, if I failed to do that, to report a felony that I was aware of, now I would have committed a felony. And I would be subject to being arrested losing my license, and losing my freedom, possibly going to jail. So as you can see, it wasn't like, oh, I could just turn my head and forget about it. Me being aware, as a peace officer, I was required to file this report. So, after I approached her about it, let her know I'm going to need to file this report. It was at that point that she says, you better not file that report. Because if you file that report, you're done. You're fired. You're out of here. Okay, now, by doing that to a peace officer who's a witness to you committing a felony, she committed 5 additional felonies by doing so. Okay, so at that point in time, I had to think about it because now she's threatening my employment. Do I keep my mouth shut, turn my head like everybody else? We're going to get to that in a moment. Or do I do the right thing, the values that I was taught, and follow the law? So I'm not going to sit here and lie. I had to think about it. I had to sleep on it. After thinking about it, sleeping on it, and praying on it, again, my values told me I needed to do the right thing. I did. I filed that report. And in doing so, yes, Judge Marlene Gonzalez, she kept her promise. When I filed that report and she became aware I'd filed that report, she fired me. She called me in and fired me. Now, she tried to hide behind, she didn't say at that moment, I'm firing you because you turned me in. She gives me a letter saying, I'm firing you because you're an at-will employee and you are no longer a good fit. Okay. On its surface, sounds probably okay, but had she not committed a felony days earlier and threatened me not to report it, that might have been okay. But the problem is, she's committed a felony. She threatened me to not report it. And then after I report it, she turns around and tries to say, you're just no longer a good fit. There's problems, basically is what she's saying. But what's interesting about that is months before, as well as the years prior, she always gave me a performance rating of 100 or better. 100 being the best that one can earn in a performance review, an annual performance review. She had given me 100 scores on all my past performance reviews up to that point. Never ever marking me down on anything, never calling me in and counseling me about anything. Basically a model employee. And with each of those reviews, she recommended me for a meritorious pay increase, which I received. So all of a sudden, I'm not a good fit. Okay, you get it. I don't need to do the math for you. Okay, as you can see, that math is not really mathing. So she does this, and I go to my employer, who was actually the county of El Paso, and they basically offboard me. And I tell them the situation, what happened, what led up to this. I do it in writing as part of my exit interview. And their stand was basically, well, she's the judge and she gets to do what she wants, and we really don't have a say in how she treats the employees. They don't have a say in how their employees are treated by department heads and managers. Okay, that's interesting. All right. So basically, my concerns, my reports as to why I was terminated, basically fell on deaf ears. You know, their practice and their custom is, well, whatever the judge says, we follow. You're out. Okay, so I'm immediately terminated. Okay. Obviously, all my checks, money stopped. But perhaps what's most devastating, instant drop of health insurance. Okay, now, I have a family member who needs that health insurance. And all of a sudden, it's dropped. This family member was scheduled for a surgery a couple of weeks away. But now I no longer have health insurance. So that surgery didn't happen, so to speak. Okay. So you can see how devastating this was. And all without cause. Absolutely no consideration given to the person who's being vilified by the system, but instead just getting on the bandwagon, if you will, and protecting a person that holds some perceived power by their position. And they're all going to get behind this person and protect them. And again, remember I said we're going to get back to that. So this protection began with some other parties that responded to that alarm along with myself. A couple of actual El Paso Sheriff's Office deputies responded. Well, a deputy and other bailiffs from other courts responded. Okay. Not one of them filed a report. They walked away and let it go. And I understand that it actually went up through the chain of command of the sheriff's office. The lieutenant and the captain, maybe even higher. And they all pretty much just did this with it. Why? Don't know. Probably because it was a judge. They don't want to harm a judge. They don't want to get, bring up anything negative against the judge. But remember I said in that same courthouse, there's 35 plus other judges that just were cowards. Not one of them. One out of 35 plus other judges who took an oath to uphold the Constitution, not one, stood up and says, this isn't right. Let me file with the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. Something. Nope. They all either turned a blind eye, they either were ignorant to the law, and these are judges, or they're going to claim, well, I didn't know, I'm ignorant to the law, I've got a robe, I've been elected as judge, I've gone to judge school, and I didn't know. Are they going to take that path and show that they're incompetent to be in that position? Or are they going to take the path that, well, yeah, we knew, but you know what? It's a fellow judge and, we'll just sweep it under the rug. Oh, a bailiff lost his job? It's just a bailiff. No big deal. Sacrificial lamb. It's better him than one of us. Don't know. But one of those scenarios occurred. Couldn't tell you which one. Okay. So from there, I did file a complaint with the Texas State Commission on Judicial Conduct. Okay. And I'm not talking about a 1 or 2 page deal. I laid the whole thing out. How it happened, and everything that happened after that. And I put in probably about 8 or 9 witnesses in this complaint. Not even 30 days later, I get a letter back from them. Basically explaining, well, we have thoroughly investigated your case and find that there is no conduct that we find is out of order. Okay, your case is closed. Okay, so I scratched my head a little bit. I'm reading this thing and I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. You're telling me you conducted a thorough investigation of an event of this nature with all of these witnesses. And by the way, they didn't contact one of those witnesses, not even for a phone interview and ask them what happened. And you're going to tell me that you did a thorough investigation before you reached your decision. Okay, so no, I did not accept that. I wrote a letter back and asked them to explain to me in writing how they conducted a thorough investigation without speaking to one witness and how they did it so quickly. And yeah, finally, the executive director of the commission responded back with a letter. Okay, and finally came clean somewhat, and basically said, well, since this allegation is criminal in nature, our commission only conducts administrative investigations and discipline. We're not going to pursue it. And they referred me back to get it investigated criminally. They referred me back to law enforcement. Okay, well, law enforcement pitifully already failed in El Paso County day one because they did nothing. Absolutely. And they were there on the scene, did nothing. So I did file complaints, sworn complaints, affidavits, with the Texas Department of Public Safety, went to the Texas Rangers. So they investigated it. And after a lengthy investigation, which they did actually do an investigation, a couple of months later, they referred the case to the district attorney for review. At the time, it was District Attorney Bill Hicks out of El Paso County. Okay, get this. Follow me along with this. So you have a district judge that commits a felony on the bench, okay, in El Paso County. The incident gets referred for investigation to a state agency who conducts the investigation, but for the purposes of indictment and prosecution, the case gets referred back to the county and the district attorney in the same county and in the same courthouse where that judge works. Okay. So before I even tell you what happened, I think you're going to guess what happened. Case declined. Prosecutorial discretion, which basically means I don't have to give a reason. This is the prosecutor. I don't have to give a reason. To me, it was no big deal. I'm going to let it go. Okay. So then I subsequently, filed the case now, civilly, because that's my only avenue left. So I do find an attorney, and he drafts a wrongful termination lawsuit against El Paso County on my behalf. It gets filed, it lands in the 384th District Court, and that judge, one of the cowards who didn't report anything, and then as a further act, then he recused himself from the case. He doesn't want to mess with it. So they bring in a visiting judge, Yvonne Rodriguez, a retired judge, many years, many decades of experience. Okay. But this judge is paid by the county. They pay visiting judges. Wait a minute. I'm suing the county. So the entity I'm suing are the defendants, but they are paying the judge. Okay. Again, is the mathing, or are you seeing where this is going? Okay. So I'm automatically thinking to myself that this is not going to work out. The very judge who's hearing my case is an employee of the defendant. How do you think that's going to turn out? And sure enough, our very first hearing, which was a pleaded jurisdiction, which was held at the end of June, now in 2025, this Judge Yvonne Rodriguez, gets into the case, and the county of El Paso, the county attorney's office. Now, this is where the big lies start happening. They come in and they claim, oh, Mr. Davis was hired by Judge Marlene Gonzalez. So basically, she was his employer, and she's a state judge. So the state of Texas is Mr. Davis's employee, not the county of El Paso. So basically, he sued us, but he's suing the wrong person. He's not a county employee. He's a state employee. Okay. And they bring about a case law that doesn't even fit. Well, forgive me, they bring about 30 some odd case laws that don't even fit. But the main one that they bring in as a fit talks about a bailiff who had filed a lawsuit in East Texas that lost his case, by the way, and it was over employment, but he was never fired. Okay, he was just reassigned and didn't lose any pay or anything like that. So you're comparing apples to oranges. His case didn't even fit my scenario, but this county/defendant paid judge, takes a big swig of this Kool-Aid and buys it and rules that, you know what? The county's right. And I'm going to probably let them off the hook. But before you do that, this Judge Marlene Gonzalez. Now, judge is on the bench during an open hearing. This Judge Marlene Gonzalez. I think she's a defendant. She should be sued. So I'm telling you all to sue her. Bring her into the case. Essentially redirecting the whole case. Okay. Now, is that part of her judicial capacity? No, it's not. Okay. That's not the judge's position. And as soon as they do that, now they are litigating the case. They're acting as a lawyer. They're practicing law now. Judges aren't there to practice law. They're there to interpret the law, not practice law. So for whatever reason, probably to save the county, because they're the ones who are paying her, she decides to step outside of her role as a judicial officer, makes a non-judicial decision to tell the lawyers that are present who to name as defendants. Okay. Now, the lawyers did follow what the judge said. And as soon as that was done, then the judge went and wrote an order and dismissed El Paso County as defendants with prejudice. Okay, now, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm going to not try to sit here and school anyone, because someone's probably going to call and say, no, you're wrong. But in my research and my reading, without hearing any evidence in the case, we're not talking about jurisdictional evidence, just evidence in the case, that a judge should be dismissing a case without prejudice, not with prejudice. Now, what that means, since you dismiss it with prejudice, that slams my door shut as far as the county's concerned. That means I can't go back and refile or do anything to them, because it's dismissed with prejudice. Okay. So after that happens, now the county is now taking away pretty much every avenue that I have to seek any type of justice in my case. Okay, so they terminate me without cause, right? Say I don't have any rights. And I'll get into that in a moment about my rights upon termination. The state does not pursue the actor administratively in any way to show that what you did was wrong. Law enforcement, not law enforcement, but the district attorney dismisses the case, making sure I don't have any avenues there. And then the judge shuts down my case. Okay. Now, in the interim, as this is happening, I go back and try one more time, because Bill Hicks lost the election. So he's out. So we have a relatively new, a brand new District Attorney James Montoya. Just got elected in office. So I gave him several weeks to kind of settle in and get a feel for his office. And I resubmitted all of my complaint affidavits to his office to see if maybe a different district attorney would feel differently about the criminal acts committed by Marlene Gonzalez. Okay. And James Montoya's office referred the case again back to the Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers came out and did a supplemental investigation, even more thorough than the first one. Spent several months. And during that investigation, they actually interviewed Judge Marlene Gonzalez. And during that interview, as recorded on a body camera worn by the ranger conducting the interviews, Judge Gonzalez admitted to everything that I accused her. Didn't bat an eye. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, I pushed the button. Yeah, I fired Roy Davis because, he filed a report. I told him not to. Not a problem. But I have immunity. So there you have it. Okay. Again, there's certain forms of immunity, but immunity doesn't cover every single thing. Okay. So that case was wrapped up, resubmitted to the new district attorney. Probably in less than 2 weeks, they declined the case. They sent me a letter basically saying, we declined to pursue this case for prosecution. Don't give a reason why, like it's lacking evidence or nothing. Just, we decline. We're not going to pursue it. That's it. End of story. No explanation. Nothing. Okay. And that letter was pinned to me by an assistant district attorney named Amy Monsiváis. That name is important, so keep it in mind, because that name is going to come up again later. So let me digress a little bit, okay? Because as I'm doing the research on my case, I then discover that when I was terminated by Judge Marlene Gonzalez as her bailiff, that realistically, I wasn't her bailiff. I know, this came as a shock to me too. So wait a minute. Now I realize that I was actually sponsored, my peace officer license in Texas was sponsored under an agency known as Council of Judges. Okay, now Council of Judges in El Paso is made up of district judges and county judges. Okay, that they work together to keep El Paso County court system running smooth and whatnot. Okay, so they were formed under a state provision that allowed them to form. But they are part of the judiciary branch. Now, I remember back in high school in our freshman year in government class, we understood there's 3 branches of government, and one does not supersede the other. Okay, we have the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. Okay, and they all pretty much do what they say. The legislative branch pretty much creates, writes, and passes laws. The executive branch, which is usually includes police, enforce the laws. And the judiciary interprets and applies the laws in a judicial setting. Okay, now, they have independent duties and tasks. And by Constitution, it's done that way. So you don't have a system, in theory, that's in control of everything. It's a checks and balances thing. Okay, so they are to do their own duties and they're not to cross duties. Okay, but in El Paso, we found out that I was being sponsored as a peace officer, bailiff, by the Council of Judges, which is part of the judiciary branch. Okay, now, you can Google this, you can AI it, check it out. A judiciary branch or anything part of the judiciary branch of government cannot create and oversee a police agency. But in El Paso, Texas, that's exactly what they did. They created a police agency. Yes, I have the documents where they submitted it to TCO, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, which is the agency that oversees police agencies and licensed peace officers throughout the state. Okay. I have the letter that came from El Paso to them, basically saying that they wanted to consolidate and become a police agency. And during that time, they issued raid jackets to the bailiffs that said on the back, big letters, bailiff, and underneath the word police. They had a badge here that was on the jacket that said, bailiff, El Paso County Police. So basically, they are putting themselves out there as a police agency. Okay, now here's where it gets sticky. Police agencies in Texas, if they serve a municipality exceeding a population of 100,000, means that the members of that agency have civil service protection. Now, there are already 2 civil service boards here in El Paso County, a regular one and one that oversees the sheriff's office. Okay, now the board has already been established here in El Paso County. So now they create another police department. Yes, illegal, mind you, but they never made that department. They never informed the commission, the Civil Service Commission, about this department and these agents. Okay, so we're talking probably excess of 40 bailiffs. Okay, so you have an agency that's sponsoring 40 plus peace officers. That's a judiciary agency. Okay, that's not reporting to the Commission on Civil Service to protect these officers. So this is wrong on all kinds of levels. All right, this should have never happened. But here's the problem, because by doing that, now let's go back to my incident. By doing that, now this division of power, now it creates confusion. So when Judge Marlene Gonzalez did what she did, who really had the authority to make an arrest or file any charges on her? And now we don't know who really does, because of what El Paso has formed and what they've done. Okay, that's number one. And then number two, them terminating me without documentation or proof that I was put on, that there was a problem, an ongoing problem. I was put on a performance improvement plan or something like that. And then just one day to the next, terminating me like that. In Texas, under civil service rules, that's a no-no. So my due process was violated there. Okay. All because of this department. So while I'm doing all this research and I'm waiting, and remember, my case in the state was dismissed against the county, leaving me only to sue Judge Marlene Gonzalez, the judge on her own. Okay, the lady who pushes buttons for no reasons, and and it's probably not even sue worthy anyway. Okay, so I'm left with that. But a few weeks, less than a month after mine gets dismissed, all of a sudden this news break, this comes out. And there was another employee, an assistant district attorney, who was terminated According to him, under similar circumstances, he claims that he was asked to do something illegal. He refused to do it. His boss fired him. Sounds a lot like my case. Okay, I don't know all the facts of his case, but I can only go by what he's alleging. So he makes these allegations, and he files a lawsuit. Okay, now mind you, you're supposed to file these within 2 years. Okay, his was filed out of statute. His was filed a day late. Okay, I guess whoever sat down and did the calculations, they wanted to file it on the last possible day. They didn't factor in that the year that they filed was a leap year. Okay, so apparently this escaped everybody. Okay, so he files this in federal court, and the county of El Paso settled with him. Give him a settlement amount. He also got his job back, got a promotion, got a pay raise. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, a person similarly situated, a situation almost the same as mine, same players, County of El Paso, the defendants, go to the table, negotiate with him, I'm assuming, enters into a settlement agreement, and pays him for his damages. And in mine, they're claiming I was never even an employee of theirs. Okay, now, I usually don't pull the race card, but I got a copy of his filing, and I've read it from cover to cover and looked at the similarities. And unfortunately, the only difference I see between his case and my case on its face, he's a white male, I'm a black male. Okay, so again, I'm not going to shove that down anyone's throats or anyone's faces. Just something to digest. Look at the circumstances for yourself and figure it out. Okay, so that happening, because I felt this is really unfair, I did go and file a complaint with the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, EEOC. So after filing with them, they did conduct an investigation. Okay, and finally some news that it didn't lead me to believe that, okay, I found someone who doesn't seem to be so corrupt, or doesn't seem to be corrupt. So they did respond back and say that they did find that my civil rights were violated. And on top of that, out of San Antonio, I did receive a written letter. Basically, in this letter, and it's entitled Right to Sue. This came from the federal government saying that, okay, we're giving you the right to sue, or we're saying we feel that there's enough there that you should be suing, or you have the right to sue El Paso County. Okay, now with that, yes, I did tried my diligence to find another attorney to represent me in this matter, because the first attorney just I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. Didn't do his job. Didn't do a good job, in my opinion. So, good luck with that one, because what started to happen is the attorneys that I reached out to were interested in the facts of my case. But as soon as I mentioned El Paso County, they all said, sorry, Mr. Davis, we're out. We're not. These are from all across the state of Texas. We're not going to accept your case. And I asked some of them why. And basically they said it. That town is so corrupt, it's almost impossible to practice law in that town the way it should be practiced. It's just too corrupt. So sorry, we can't help you. They'll just keep flying us in and play their games, and it will become worthless at some point. Okay, I heard what they said. I understood. So at that point, yes, I did have to do my research and file my own complaint in federal court. And which I did, December 1st. So now I did name the county of El Paso and named many people who were within the county individually, as well as Judge Gonzalez, the original actor. And I also named Judge Yvonne Rodriguez, who, in my opinion, dismissed my state case with prejudice when she shouldn't have, after directing my case. And so I did file that suit. Okay, you think after all of this that I'd be on some sort of path of justice. Okay, so right away, the county attorney's office that represents the county of El Paso, they file a motion, and right off the bat, they claim that I was not a county employee, that I have a misunderstanding, that I'm a state employee and I am suing the wrong entity. Here we go again. So there's filings back and forth where I'm trying to prove to them, as well as the court, I was a county employee. I reached out to the IRS. I looked at my pay stubs, my W-2s, my W-2s that had a federal employer identification number, FEIN. I took that number, I reported that to the IRS. I said, okay, IRS, this is my number on my W-2 showing as my employer. Who does it belong to? Is it the state of Texas, or who does it belong to? They say, County of El Paso. So I go to the Texas Workforce Commission, right? Give them my social security number. I said, look, I've been driving to someplace for the last 8.5 years, parking my car in the garage, reporting in their building. But these people are claiming I wasn't their employee. So can you run my social security number and see who was my employer between this period and this period? They said, County of El Paso. Okay. And I go back, I look at all my training records, who's signing off on my certificates. County of Employee. Who gave me a handbook, an employee handbook that I need to follow? County of Employee. And it goes on and on and on. But you have members of the county, government, lawyers, officers of the court, without batting an eye, will lie to the federal court about me even being an employee. That is unbelievable to me. And I'm not even gonna lie, I was floored. I was floored by that. I was taken back because I couldn't believe I was reading this. I thought, okay, is this a joke? But I look at the top right corner of that form. It had a file stamp on it to the court. They actually filed this with the court. Wow. Okay. So then we go back and forth on all the defendants that I sued. Okay. And then there's an argument back and forth. Well, this person's a county employee. This person is not. We'll represent this people, but we don't represent these people because these are state actors. Okay. We'll go with that. Get a little bit further in the case. Next thing I know, 2 of these state actors that they identified, they being the county attorney's office, who they identify as state employees and say, we don't represent them. Now all of a sudden, because they're other attorneys, they're friends. It's this district attorney and Amy Monsiváis. Okay. Now all of a sudden, they get brought back into the case, being represented by the county attorney. Well, wait a minute, guys. I thought you said represent state officials. So I put an objection into the court that, hey, wait a minute. County says they don't represent these folks. Now they're putting in an entry and an answer saying they represent them. And plus it's a conflict of interest because they're both defendants in the same case. So the county attorney, who's a defendant named by me in this case, is defending another person who's also a defendant. How can that happen? Okay. So to my surprise, I get a response from the court that's saying, you don't have a standing in this. You don't have a right to complain. But actually, not only that the county attorney in El Paso, Texas, it's their primary duty to represent all parties, to include state. And they included in that order denying my objection. They referred to a statute, a state statute, Texas Government Code, 45.171A, right? And emphasized to me, basically, it's their primary duty to represent. So basically, go away, Mr. Davis. It's their duty. You don't have an objection. Well, I read it. I'm reading the statute as they present it, and it's clear because it omits state officials. When you read it, it says County of El Paso, county officials, state of Texas. Doesn't say state officials. And then it goes on. Okay. So since the court and their response to me relied on this, I put in a request for clarification. Okay, you took this stand. Are you sure? And would you be so kind? Would you clarify it? I just want to make sure that down the road, we're not going to have any other issues. I'm reading it one way. I just want to make sure we're clear. Well, to that, the court responded back to me, basically declining to reconsider. Essentially told me, we told you what it was in that first order. We're not going to go over it anymore. It is what it is. Boom. That's what I got. I'm like, okay. So the court has really affirmed and reaffirmed, dug their heels in. All right. And now because of the county attorney and their lies, okay, now the issue comes up of service. Because the county attorney didn't answer for everybody, right? Although, remember, the court said they're responsible for everybody. So now the court sends me an order saying, submit a brief explaining to the court why or how you'd served certain defendants and why you think it was proper service. Okay. So again, this is not something that can be done really quickly. They gave me a little less than 30 days to do this. Okay. So as I'm doing the research for this, I put out some emails for discovery that was going to assist me in my response. And I saw where I was going to need an extension. So I go and a few days before the deadline, I had put in a request for an extension of time to allow me more time to conduct my research so that I can properly respond to the court. For some reason, even though I went and filed it at the counter, at the courthouse, it never got actually entered. The court itself never saw my request. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. Okay, so that I wouldn't miss the deadline, although I put in for an extension before, but didn't hear back from it, I kind of put together a hurried response and got it in on time. My brief. Okay, and yeah, in my brief, I did put that, hey, I'm going with what the court said. You all put, in a order, a few orders back, that county attorney is responsible for all the parties. In fact, you even stressed they had a primary duty to represent these parties. Okay. And I explained that, okay, they have all the documents. They're in possession of all the documents. but they're not representing all the parties. And basically, the court did respond back to me. Didn't accept my answer. But to really add salt to injury, they being the court and their order, now wants to come back and explain that I misunderstood the order. Okay, wait a minute. I gave y'all an opportunity to clarify so there would be no misunderstandings. And y'all said, no, we decline to even clarify it. But yet when I come back and use the order that you all put out, and now it's back in your face and it makes sense, now you want to clarify it. But it's not just clarifying. Now this is where it really gets bad, because now we're in the federal level now, remember? Okay? They put in there now, they changed their language, they added language. No, our order didn't say that they must represent. It says that they may represent. Okay. Lie number one. I went back and looked at that order. As it pertains to them representing, the county representing anybody, the word may does not appear one time. But now the court's saying, it told me it may. But you go back and look at the order, the word may is not even in there. Okay, come on, court. I'm relying on you here. Okay. Then they go on, after that fiasco, I'm going to call it, after that lie, then they add to the statute, they add to the language. That's not part of the statute. They add to the language because all it says in the actual statute, where it says that it's a primary duty of the El Paso County Attorney to represent county officials, state of Texas, and all legal matters. Or in all civil matters, forgive me. In all civil matters. Period. But now, in this last order, the court's saying, in all matters in which they've made an entry of appearance. The statute doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. Unless they, okay. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they have a new revision that came out in the last 30 days where they've added that language and it's part of that state law now. Okay. And again, maybe they want to shoot me a letter or come on and explain it. But the latest version I have doesn't include that language, court. Does not include that language. Okay. So you probably don't, court doesn't care. But I'm just letting you know that it's not appreciated. Okay. And number two, it's dirty. It's not right. You don't put out an order when someone asks, hey, this is a little ambiguous. Are we sure here? Just to clear up the air so there's no mistakes made. And you say, no, it's as it stands. We're not going to clarify anything. Then when it gets put back under your nose again, now you want to backpedal and actually change the statute to fit your agenda. You're playing the same game as El Paso County, as lower government. So what I see happening here is that government covers your government from the bottom all the way to the top. My experience, I'm not going to speak for everybody. My experience so far in this case, there's been no justice. No justice. I've seen a lot of covering up. I've seen a lot of lying. I've seen a lot of backpedaling. And people saying one thing one day, saying something different another day. I don't know. But what I've done lately is I took this last order that told me to serve two defendants, to reserve two defendants. Marlene Gonzalez, Yvonne Rodriguez, state judges. So in Texas, how do you serve state judges? You serve them through the Texas Attorney General. Okay. Now, I have served that. Okay. But I also added the Texas Attorney General because a member of his office was aware that Marlene Gonzalez was being sued in federal court, was aware of my petition, or my complaint rather, and the summons, okay, and didn't do anything about it. They were aware. They just didn't answer. Playing games. They just didn't answer. So a member of the Attorney General's office was aware. Didn't do anything. So that lawyer now has sucked his boss into my lawsuit. But I also went ahead and reserved all the parties that the county attorney from the beginning claimed were state officials. So we'll see. Our Texas Attorney General right now is Ken Paxton. So we'll see how he responds and if he's going to reject those ones that are truly county entity and county employees, which the county attorney should have acknowledged from the beginning instead of lying about it. And we're going to see how the court's going to handle it from that. So all the documents that I mentioned, that I put up, if you're like me and you like to read things for yourself, visit our website at American Justice Accountability Allowance, or AJAA-US.org, and go to the events page. Go to the calendar. And on the calendar, you'll see the links. You'll see on the day that it was filed, you'll see the filings. And you'll be able to click on those and actually see the full document. Now, I'll warn you, I'm not sure. Brevity is not one of my virtues. And you'll see that in my writing. Most of my filings are, 30, 40, 50 pages. My last one with exhibits was actually over 100 pages. So I lay it out. I don't hold back because this is information that needs to be out. It needs to be published. It needs to be filed. It's not what a lawyer would typically do, which usually likes to file, page and a half, 2-page motions and stuff like that. Just kind of, really doesn't hit the facts, just maybe cites a little legal theory, whatever. But I'm taking the opportunity as a pro se litigant to put all the facts in each one of my filings. And again, these are all subject to public record, unless they find some way to seal it and hide it. Who knows? But as of right now, it's all subject to public record. So again, if you visit the events page, you can follow everything through. And again, what it all comes down to, I'll just kind of wrap it in a nutshell. A judge commits a criminal act, Judge Marlene Gonzalez. I'm aware of it. I file a mandatory report pursuant to my position, pursuant to my license. To silence me, I get fired. All the other people that are aware of what happened with this, people holding peace officer license, people holding judicial licenses, all get involved in the cover-up. They turn a blind eye and they seal their lips. No one takes any action. No one stands up and does the right thing. Now, make it worse, then I pursue my legal rights, my legal avenues. Okay? I file criminal charges against her. that gets shut down. Remember, Amy Monsiváis declines it. Okay. I pursue justice through the judicial board that provides oversight for Texas judges to look at this matter. They shut it down. Then I pursue civil and state court. They bring in the axe. They pay Judge Rodriguez to shut it down. Now I have to go and refile my case in federal court. Okay. And they're fighting tooth and nail to shut me down. Because right now we're in the jurisdictional stage. This has been going on for over 5 months. Okay. They're trying to prevent my case from going to the next phase, which is the discovery phase. That's when I get to start issuing subpoenas, holding depositions, questioning witnesses, and really getting the story out. The county of El Paso is fighting tooth and nail to prevent that. Why? Because they don't want the story out. Meanwhile, remember what I said earlier, they give a nice handsome payout to a white counterpart who also filed basically the same lawsuit. And this is what's interesting about that, because that person is the second in command. John Briggs is his name, second in command of the district attorney's office. Amy Monsiváis, remember that name? One of the subordinate attorneys in that office. But also happens to be John Briggs' wife. And you'll see in the article that went up earlier, the lady sitting next to John Briggs, that's his wife, Amy Monsiváis, the same district attorney that shut down my criminal case. Because at the time, John Briggs knew about his case and that he was going to get a nice big hefty payout. But you got to remember, the county has limited funds. So they needed my case to go away because obviously, I was threatening the coffers, so to speak. So in order to make sure they got a good payout, they had to work together to kill all the avenues of my case, which essentially they did at the state level. Again, thank you for joining. As this case progresses, I will be putting up future updates. They'll probably be much shorter in nature, so you can keep up and see what's going on with my case. Again, I think this is important for the American people so they can see how our system really works versus how we think it works or how it's portrayed in movies or on television. This is how it really works, folks. And I think we need to know. Again, I'm just going to end with my little speech here. That remember, the power of the ballot. As we hear these things, are we going to change government? No. But we can start changing some of the people one by one who are involved in it that are allowing or participating in conduct that I've just described in my case. And I'm sure it's happening in many other cases. I'm sure I'm not the only person in other case that this is happening to. It's going to become an epidemic, or a pandemic rather, if it goes unchecked. And you hear me say this quite often. The power of the ballot. We can make a difference by replacing those individuals who are serving that don't deserve or who should not be serving. Every vote counts. Don't fall into this trap. Well, I'm just one vote. Yeah, you get 100,000 people say that, and next thing you know, we've got people sitting in seats they shouldn't be seated in. I know here in El Paso County, we have over 500,000 registered voters. Now, I'm not counting the presidential year, but in local elections and whatnot, we might have a turnout of 60,000 people. Okay, so what? 2%, less than 2% of the population is deciding, who's going to be judges, who's going to be school board members, who's going to be mayors, who's going to be county commissioners, etc., etc. But, everyone thinks, oh, I got to get out and vote in the presidential. Yes, the presidential election makes a big impact on our lives, but on our day-to-day lives, things that impact us on a personal level. I'm talking about the people who can put you in jail, who can take your money, who can take your kids away from you, who determines how much you pay in taxes on your house. Those are the elections that you need to participate in. Well, every single election, every single time. Make sure you get out there and vote. Very, very important. Get involved. Don't turn a blind eye. If you see things, say something. Yeah, and I know there's people out there saying that, hey, if I were your boss and you turned me in, I'd fire you too. I know. I understand that. And you know what? I'm not going to fault you for that, because you're thinking like the majority in this country now. And that's what makes it kind of a shame that the majority really thinks that way. And that's why our country is headed in the direction it's headed now, because people are going with the majority instead of going with what's right. I'm Roy Davis, your host of Under Glass. Thank you for joining us in this episode. Hopefully you'll be watching future episodes. It won't be about me, but about others who suffered the same at the hands of people in power. And that's what this show is about. So in the meantime, love God and love people. See you next time.